Now, this is just going to be a really quick video discussing the current state of the show Resistance, since we're now 4 episodes deep into the second half of the first season, and as I said a while back, after we got that mid-season trailer that looked pretty good to be honest, I try to keep those who might be on the fence about watching it informed, and to give those who have been watching it a place to discuss what they've thought about it thus far. And before I really get into it, I'm going to put the same little disclaimer out there that I usually do when talking about this show, which is that yes, I understand it's a kids show, and they are clearly the target audience. However, considering it is part of the official Star Wars canon, I am reviewing it for fellow adult fans, or older kids who have an interest in keeping up with the canon, or who have enjoyed previous Star Wars animated shows. To put it simply, I'm reviewing it as a Star Wars fan for other Star Wars fans. If I was reviewing it just as a kids show, I would look at it differently. And with that being said, the big question for those who haven't been watching it is, of course, is the show getting any better? Well, I suppose the answer to that is yes, but the bar was set pretty low right out of the gate, so that's really not saying a whole lot. One of the big improvements is that Kaz, the main character, has been a bit less goofy and clumsy in recent episodes, and I say a bit because it's still certainly there, but it doesn't seem to be quite so over the top and persistent like it was earlier in the season, when he was falling over his own 2 feet in what felt like every single scene. However, unless you consider being slightly less clumsy some kind of actual character development, there's been almost none of it to speak of after 14 episodes now. None of these characters really stand out. They're all rather generic and have very little depth, if any at all. And again, I know this is a kids show, which means I'm not expecting or demanding overly complex character arcs, and I also know we're dealing with 23-minute episodes once commercials are taken out of the equation, so there's not a ton of time to deep dive into backgrounds. But we've learned so very little about any of these main characters, and certainly not enough to really care about any of them yet. Iger, who is basically Kaz's boss in the show, is pretty much the only one we've had any type of real backstory for, having learned he was once a pilot for the Rebellion, and that he lost his family, a wife and a daughter, due to a racing accident caused by his brother. Kaz's backstory, though, has been mainly shrouded in mystery, and they seem to be implying there's something important there with his family, but since the character isn't all that exciting, neither is any mystery surrounding him or his origin. Then, when again talking about character development, there's Cynara, a pirate spy on the station who Kaz kinda has a thing for, though it isn't reciprocated. She's been the only character to get any sort of real progression or arc thus far, as she seems to be conflicted at times about whether or not she's doing the right thing. However, since we don't care that much about the characters she was fooling and possibly betraying, again, it doesn't have a lot of impact on the story. Nevertheless, the potential is there with her character. And speaking of the story itself, to put it simply, it's been rather boring thus far. That's just my honest, blunt opinion on the matter, and you can certainly disagree with me if you've been enjoying it. The whole premise here is that Kaz is at this station, called the Colossus, to spy on the First Order for the Resistance, and the First Order wants to take control of the station because it has strategic value, and they're going to use it when they launch their impending attack on the New Republic. And the whole first season so far has been about the First Order using pirates to attack the station, so that Captain Doza, who runs the station, will turn to the First Order for protection, even though he has this group of pilots called Aces, who usually handle that for him. Perhaps the real problem here, though, is we know exactly where this first season is going, and the journey itself hasn't been all that enjoyable. And what I mean by that is we know, thanks to the mid-season trailer, and what we were told before the show even came out, that this first season will overlap with the events of The Force Awakens. And so far it seems like the point of this season is to ever so slowly build to that. To build to the final episode or two when all the real excitement is finally going to happen. And yeah, those last episodes could turn out to be good and exciting simply because of their relation to the events in the movie. And it'll be cool to possibly see some reaction in the general galaxy to the destruction of the Hosnian system. Problem is, it feels like they've been so concerned about where they're going, how they'll end the first season, that they failed to make enjoyable individual episodes along the way. And if they weren't going to give us more excitement until the bitter end, they should have tried harder to really flesh out these characters so that we'll actually care when they're faced with, what I can only assume, will be challenges and decisions centered around the First Order destroying the Hosnian system and starting to take over the galaxy. Because I think it's a pretty safe assumption that the Ace pilots, as they're called, are going to join the Resistance eventually, but there's been so little focus on them, to making us like them or even care about them, that their eventual decision to join the Resistance will feel pretty meaningless. And no, I don't want to sit here and just rip on the show. If you've been enjoying it, or if you've been enjoying it with your family, I think that's great. I really do. And the thing is, I personally believe there was some interesting potential in the general concept. I think the show could have actually been good if Kaz and the whole spying thing that they came out of the blocks with was removed in favor of just focusing entirely on the aces from the start, and letting us get to know and care about some, and dislike others, of these elite racers who live the good life and, in general, don't really care or concern themselves with the politics of the galaxy. They could have started this out as a Star Wars racing show that very quickly became something more as the First Order began to gain a foothold on the station, and some of these pilots welcomed them and maybe were offered positions within the First Order that they considered taking, while other members of the Aces rejected their infringement and considered becoming spies for the Resistance. And then when the Hosnian system is destroyed at the end of the season, you leave us with the cliffhanger of what these Aces will do. Who will now join the First Order, who will fight for the Resistance, and who will do nothing. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Again, this was just a quick update on how the show's been going, for those who maybe have been tempted to watch it. I probably won't come back to it again until the season finale. However, I'd love to hear what those of you who have been watching the show have to say about it. Is it better than I'm making it out to be, or maybe even worse? Let me know in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.